Hey super writers. So today we're revising with a checklist in mind. Okay. I have a tiny little checklist here which might be easier for you to use. I made it based on the ones that we use at school that we use to grade, which we'll also post on your assignment for today. So you can use the 4th and 5th grade checklist with the rubric on it if you want, but you can also use my simplified version here. So today you're going to be rereading your drafts and highlighting to make sure you have these things elemented in your story. Okay, we do this in class all the time, right? So it might look a little different for you than me. I decided to print out my draft, okay, because I want to underline where I have certain craft moves in my story and in my writing. If it's on the computer, you probably maybe do this a little differently. You might highlight it, you might not, you might do it your own way, but I'm just showing you the way that I'm going to do it. Okay, so let me show you what I have. I have my little checklist set up here. If you want to pause it, okay. What we're looking for, because you spent all week revising, are do you have tiny actions, okay? And I have my markers ready, right? I'm going to highlight where I have tiny actions. Dialogue, character motivations, internal thinking, and figurative language. It's going to be a little bit easier for me just to reread and look for one at a time. Okay, so I'm rereading and looking for tiny actions. Okay, sorry, I'm using my phone. So just follow along as I read. Going to the grocery store shouldn't feel like running a marathon. I was going straight past the meat. That's a tiny action. I was going straight past the meat and about to make a left turn into aisle 6 onto the checkout line. The meat section was as empty as my classroom during the summer. There in the middle of the aisle was a man with his cast on, taking up the middle, the freezer door open on the right, and his cart behind him on the left. I had to wait. The impatience rose with warmth to my head. I guess waiting is an action, but it's not really a tiny action. So I want to add in that your actions should be tiny. Okay. He and his 2 friends were talking about what food to get. So I thought to myself, I'm going to be here a while. I also thought, who comes to the store without a list? I inched forward. It's a tiny action, so they would get the hint. I got into line after they scrambled around me. Scrambled is a tiny action because they look like they're running around. And the line started to move. My shoulders dropped into relief mode. And that's a tiny action. One of the guys turned the cart around and lined up behind me. Yellow packs of cookies everywhere. I looked around for fudge sticks. Okay. And threw a pack in the cart. The line stopped moving and I stared at the floor. So throwing a pack in is a tiny action. Staring is a tiny action. Large green lines that said social distance, 6 feet, with a picture of a shopping cart in it. I could feel myself getting hot from my coat and face mask. My face was boiling in water. All of a sudden, I felt a tap behind me. I thought to myself, I must have bumped into something. There's no way this guy hit me with his cart. I slowly turned around. The cart was right behind me. I looked at him, but he was talking to his friend. I turned back around and inched in a little bit, being super careful to stay 6 feet away from the person in front of me. I felt a tap again. I could feel my face heating up. I turned around and looked at him again, but he wasn't looking. Thankfully, the line was moving forward, so I pulled out my phone to text my cousin. Pulling out my phone is an action. Texting is an action. I could have added in even more detail, like my fingers tapped furiously. Hurry up, the message sent. Before she could read it, I saw her walking toward me. In line. Thank goodness I had someone to distract me from my annoyed mood. I gave her a look that she could tell how I was feeling. I looked at her again, then I glanced my eyes in the direction of the guy. Glancing is a tiny action. Without saying it out loud, because the guy was right behind me, I told her with my eyes to look at this guy. She followed my eyes. He saw me look at him. Finally, the line moved up, and I turned around to see if he moved. He was looking right back at me. He hadn't moved. I think he took the hint. Okay, I could keep going through the rest of my story, but I want to show you the next one I'm going to reread for. But I just want to show you how many tiny actions I have throughout my story. Okay, tiny actions are probably one of the most important things on this checklist because they really show you what the character looked like and what they were doing, okay, in their story. So if you don't have a lot of tiny actions, that's probably the most important thing you could add in today, and really detailed ones, right? Like I said, I inched up a little bit, or I glanced my eyes in their direction. I didn't just say, I moved up, or I looked, right? I made it a little bit more interesting by showing how I did it, right? I moved up slowly by inching, or I glanced at her like I just looked from a distance, okay? So now as I reread again, I'm going to be looking for dialogue, okay? Same thing, I will underline anywhere where I have dialogue, okay? Same thing with internal thinking, same thing with figurative language. I'll just do an example of each so you know what everything is. So dialogue, I know I don't have a lot of dialogue in my story. I actually don't know if I have any. I remember the security guard at the end of the story. He says, go ahead, move up. Go ahead, move down. That's the only dialogue I really have. Okay. So I probably need to go back and add in dialogue. That's going to be something that I'm going to go back and revise my story with. Okay. Because if you don't have it, you need to try to add it into your story today. Write it down. Character motivations. Sorry, guys, I'm on my phone. So looking for my motivations. Well, my motivation was to hurry up and get out of the grocery store. Let's see if you can find that. The impatience rose with the warmth to my head. Well, I was getting impatient because I wanted to leave. And I also wanted the man to stay away from me, right? Because I was really worried about the coronavirus. There was no way this guy hit me with his cart. Now here I'm going to go back and add in something about why I was so mad about it. I can't believe someone would be so mad, or I can't believe he could be so careless with the coronavirus going around. Okay, and I'm just going to add in my motivation because I'm thinking about my story, and of course, I know my story very well by now. You all know my story very well by now. But if I'm going to put this out in the world for someone else to read, they may not realize that the story takes place while the coronavirus is going on. So they might not really understand why I was getting so mad that the guy was close to me. So you have to think about your story, all right? Have a lot of other people been to where you've been or have put themselves in the same shoes as you? If you're telling a story about you sitting home doing homework during the coronavirus, chances are probably not that many people can relate. Like your parents or your families can't relate to that story. Maybe your sibling, but your mom or someone else in the world who's reading it is going to have no idea what you're talking about unless you tell them like why you're sitting at home doing your homework. So make sure that your draft includes character motivation. Let's go back and see what I have left on my checklist. Internal thinking. I think most of you guys know what this is. A lot of places I also thought, all right? I thought to myself, I'm going to be here a while. I thought, who comes to the store without a list? Okay. Another place, I thought to myself, I must have bumped into something, right? Any place where you're thinking pretty much is your internal thinking. Now, figurative language. You guys all should have already added this in, I believe, on Tuesday and Wednesday. I happen to remember where it is, okay? I tried to make my comparison in the beginning of the story, okay? The impatience rose with warmth to my head. He and his two friends were talking about what food to get. So I thought to myself, I'm going to be here a while. I also thought, who comes to the store without a list? Okay. I remember I was making comparisons about my face was boiling with water. That was my metaphor because I used is or was. Okay. And my simile, I think I was talking about I was impatient as. Oh, what felt like forever. The end of my story. What felt like 25 years was finally overcome with relief. So that's my simile, my comparison. Okay. Oh, I also added my onomatopoeia, my sound word, and my hyperbole. my exaggeration. Okay, so I have to go back and find my hyperbole, but I have everything for my figurative language. I've added lots of internal thinking. I went back and added in my character motivation. Really important that you guys have this in your story too. Some dialogue I need to go back and still add, and then tiny actions I have lots of. Okay, once you have these things included in your draft, you're in great shape. Make sure you use your checklist, either from here that I showed you, or you could use the one that we uploaded onto Google Classroom. Keep up the good work, writers.